Tell me, Captain, ever play soldier with the real ones, or just file their reports? His tone was smooth, mocking, even charming on the surface. But Elise Marlowe knew better. This wasn't a question, it was bait, a test. She didn't flinch. She just moved. She was just there for a routine review. Until the general made a hand signal, known only to Tier 1 SEALs, buried deep in classified protocol. But she did. She responded with the exact signal. And in the next 83 seconds, a coffee mug hit the floor, an emergency lockdown was ordered, and Captain Elise Marlowe vanished behind secure Pentagon doors. What had she just exposed? And why? Did a top general freeze at a signal only SEALs were cleared to use? The office door closed behind her with a soft, definitive click. Captain Elise Marlowe stood at attention, her uniform crisp, her expression unreadable. Across the room, behind a fortress of mahogany and metals, General Barrett Sloan barely looked up from her personnel file. The silence stretched. The room smelled of old leather, burnt coffee, and something heavier. Pride, maybe, or control. Framed commendations lined the walls. Pictures with presidents, warlords, and prime ministers. A museum of power, curated by the man now flipping through her record like it was a grocery list. Finally, his voice. West Point, top 5%, counter-intel deployments, operation names classified. He closed the folder and looked up, his eyes sharp and amused. You're decorated, Captain. Quietly, of course. Thank you, sir. Decorated. And oddly invisible, he continued, leaning back in his chair. Most officers with this file spend their careers dodging desk jobs, not walking straight into one. A beat passed. Then came the smile. Small, tight, practiced. Tell me, Captain, Sloan said, folding his hands together slowly. What separates intelligence officers from assets? The good from the great? Elise held his gaze. She knew this wasn't about her answer. This was performance theater, and she was already on stage. Judgment, sir, she replied calmly. The ability to know when to speak and when silence serves better. Sloan chuckled, a low rasp that didn't reach his eyes. A rehearsed line, but well delivered. He stood suddenly, walked to the window behind him, and stared out at the distant Potomac. The room felt quiet, except for the humming air vent and the occasional creak of old wood. Then, as if swatting a fly or stretching, Sloan's right hand casually dipped to his side and formed a shape. To anyone else, it was nothing. A relaxed gesture, fingers bent casually, but Elise's stomach clenched instantly. She'd seen that signal once, on a cold rooftop whispered through NVGs under blackout conditions. It was a classified Tier 1 extraction signal, used only by SEALs under active duress. Enemy contact, backup needed, zero comms. It did not belong in this office. She could have stayed still, could have ignored it, but something in her, training, instinct, defiance, moved first. Without breaking eye contact, Elise mirrored the signal. Her hand shifted in one clean motion. Precise, perfect, undeniable. Sloan froze. For a second, just one, time held its breath. Then, clatter. The coffee mug slipped from his other hand and shattered against the hardwood floor. Coffee splashed across his boots, the rug, the edge of the desk. The general stared at her hand, then her face, and then something changed. His mouth opened slightly like he meant to speak, then shut again. He reached for the secure line on his desk. Elise Marlowe, you are not to leave this room, he said, the mask of casual dominance gone. His voice was clipped, cold, mechanical. This is Sloan. Full lockdown protocol. I want an armed team at E88 now. Elise didn't move, didn't react. She simply let her hand drop back to her lap. Exactly 47 seconds later, the hallway outside erupted in motion. The door slammed open. 2 military police officers entered, rifles lowered but ready. Behind them, a woman in civilian clothes strode in, flashing a badge that wasn't shown long enough to read. Elise Marlowe, the woman asked. Yes. Come with us. Now. The MPs flanked her. Elise stood slowly, eyes still on Sloan, whose expression had returned to something close to normal. Only this time, beneath it, there was something else. Not anger, not confusion, fear. They marched her out of the office and into the corridor as the security alarm began to ring faintly in the distance. People passing in the hallway didn't stop to look. This was the Pentagon. Things happened behind closed doors all the time. But Elise wasn't just being escorted. She was being erased. They took her ID badge, her phone, her sidearm. She didn't ask questions, because deep down she already knew. This wasn't about a mistake. It wasn't even about loyalty. This was about something she had once agreed never to acknowledge again. A signal, a team, and an operation that never officially happened. And now somehow, someone inside the Pentagon was afraid she remembered it. The elevator didn't have a button panel. It moved only when authorized by voices Elise didn't recognize and keycards she wasn't allowed to see. As the steel box descended deeper beneath the Pentagon, the hum of machinery above faded into a suffocating silence. Elise Marlowe stood still between two armed escorts. No cuffs, no threats. But the message was clear. You are no longer in control. When the doors finally slid open, they revealed a corridor bathed in pale fluorescence. Concrete walls, no signage, no windows. The air was colder down here. Still, sterile. A single metal door waited at the end. It opened before anyone knocked. She was led inside. The room was smaller than she expected. Just a table, 3 chairs, a wall-mounted camera, and in the far corner, a faint red light that never blinked. Colonel Dana Whitlock was already seated, her posture rigid, her uniform immaculate. Her hair was pulled back into a severe knot, and the folder in front of her was thick, too thick. "Captain Elise Marlowe," Whitlock said without looking up. "Take a seat." Elise sat. Major Vincent Hale entered next, carrying a thermal mug and a grim expression. He placed it on the table like it was evidence. Not coffee. He didn't speak. He just pressed a button on the recorder. "This is Colonel Dana Whitlock, Office of Internal Security, conducting debrief protocol 7B regarding Captain Elise Marlowe. Present, Major Vincent Hale, liaison from Defense Intelligence. Subject has been detained under emergency protocol following anomalous behavior during a scheduled personnel review." Whitlock finally looked at her. Her eyes weren't cruel, but they were sharp, like a blade meant to probe, not to wound. "Captain, let's begin with something easy," she said. "Name, rank, and assignment." Elise didn't hesitate. "Captain Elise Marlowe, Intelligence Corps, currently assigned to Force Analysis Division, Northern Command." Whitlock gave a small nod. "And your clearance level?" "TSSCI with compartmental caveats," Elise answered. "Same as it's been since 2020. Hale opened the folder. He tapped a section with his pen. "There's a 6-month gap in your file," he said, "between your return from Kabul in March 2021 and your reassignment to domestic analysis in October. No records, no travel logs, no field debrief. Nothing." Elise didn't answer. "Classified?" Hale asked. "Yes." Whitlock leaned forward. "Captain, every known agency that operates classified fieldwork was contacted within the last 4 hours. None of them claim your file. Not SOCOM, not DIA, not JSOC, not even the National Reconnaissance Office." Elise kept her face still. "This kind of omission," Whitlock continued, "is either an error or a cover-up." "Or," Elise said calmly, "it's above your clearance." There was a pause. That wasn't defiance. It was a warning. But they didn't blink. Whitlock tapped her fingers against the file again. "Let's talk about who you spoke to during that time." Elise looked straight ahead. "No one outside the operation. Name them." "I can't." Hale leaned in now, voice sharper. "This is not a courtroom, Captain. This is an internal security investigation under National Threat Protocol. You don't get to stonewall us." "I'm not stonewalling," Elise replied. "I'm protecting something you're not cleared to see." Whitlock sighed. "Let me be clear. You demonstrated active knowledge of Tier 1 hand signals, specifically SEAL extraction protocols, during your encounter with General Sloan. That alone is grounds for a full investigation into foreign compromise." Elise blinked. "Foreign compromise?" Hale crossed his arms. "Or rogue training, unauthorized exposure, Possession of black tier field knowledge. Take your pick. You think I'm a threat? Elise asked. Whitlock didn't answer. She simply turned the folder toward her, revealing photographs. Grainy, enhanced, time-stamped. Satellite images, drone feeds, surveillance stills. Tell me about this building, Whitlock said, pointing to a frame. Elise recognized it instantly. She didn't even have to look long. A safe house in northern Syria. She could still feel the weight of the vest she'd worn, the tight heat of a radio mic taped to her neck. I don't recognize it, she said. Whitlock's voice didn't change. And this man? Another photo, a face Elise would never forget. Oh, former arms dealer turned recruiter. She'd sat across from him, lied to him, saved lives because of what he unknowingly told her. I've never seen him. You're lying, Hale snapped. I'm surviving, she said coldly. Whitlock closed the folder. We've interviewed your former instructors, your commanding officers, even your roommate from West Point. None of them can explain how an Army captain, without SOF deployment history, knows how to respond to a SEAL emergency code in real time. And yet I did, Elise said, her voice low. Maybe that should tell you something. Whitlock paused. Then she shifted her tone. Let's talk about your family, Captain. Your father immigrated from Busan, served in the Merchant Marine. Your mother died when you were 9. You were raised by an aunt who was denied a security clearance twice. Did you know that? I did, Hale leaned in. So let me ask you again. Who trained you? Where were you for those missing 6 months? And why does your signal response match protocols not even our Tier 1 training cadets get access to? Elise looked at them both, calm, measured. If I were hypothetically given information above my level, she said slowly, what's the procedure to report it? Whitlock froze. She recognized the deflection, but also the confession buried inside it. You're not going to tell us, are you? Whitlock asked. I will, Elise said softly. But not to you. The room went silent, the kind of silence that shifts the weight of everything. Whitlock reached for the secure phone. This interview is suspended, she said. We're escalating. The air in the interrogation room had shifted. Not colder, not louder, just heavier. Colonel Whitlock stood stiffly beside the steel table, her finger hovering over the secure phone's keypad. Major Hale leaned against the wall, arms crossed, silent but tense. And Elise still sat calmly, hands folded, spine straight, eyes unreadable. Then the door opened, not slowly, not loudly, just decisively. In walked a man in plain clothes, civilian button-down shirt, sleeves rolled, hair disheveled like he'd been dragged out of sleep. But every person in the room stiffened at once. Admiral Cole Ramsey. His presence didn't demand attention. It commanded it. At 62, Ramsey had led operations that didn't exist, across continents where American boots were never supposed to touch sand. His name was whispered in SOCOM quarters and scrubbed from official memos. No one said they worked for him, but everyone knew he was real. Whitlock took one step back. Hale uncrossed his arms. Out, Ramsey said simply. No rank, no protocol, no argument. They left without hesitation. The door closed behind them with a sound that seemed louder than it should have been. Ramsey walked to the wall, flicked off the recording device with a single motion, then pulled a small black puck from his jacket and placed it on the table. A faint hum filled the room. Signal jammer. They were now in a pocket of silence. He sat across from Elise. No folder, no notes, just a quiet moment. Elise, he said finally, you held your cover longer than I thought anyone could. She blinked. You knew this would happen. Ramsey didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned forward, his elbows on the table. We kept it buried, he said softly. Too well, it seems. She waited. Ramsey exhaled. 3 years ago, Operation Glass Echo embedded you with a Syrian terror network planning coordinated strikes on U.S. embassies across the Middle East. We believed they had acquired chemical agents from abandoned regime stockpiles. You remember the mission brief? I remember everything, Elise said, and you were never supposed to. He looked down at his hands for a second. When he looked back up, his voice dropped even lower. You were supposed to gather intel, map their networks, pass location data to the embedded SEAL team, then disappear. But we lost the house, Elise said. Her voice cracked, just slightly. The radio went dark. I walked in, and they were gone. Ramsey nodded slowly. And Kowalski's team was pinned down in an apartment block, surrounded. Extraction Bird was shot down. The backup unit was hours out. He looked her dead in the eyes. You made the call. She said nothing. You blew your cover, he continued. You used the enemy's own comms, hijacked their fallback protocol, rerouted our entire squad to safety using a channel not even I thought still worked. You called in a ghost code. Ghost Walker, Elise whispered. Ramsey gave a faint smile. That name was never spoken out loud, not even in the mission log. He leaned back in his chair. You saved 6 operators that day. The youngest had a wife 6 months pregnant. You could have walked away, kept your identity safe, but you didn't. You ran toward the fire, coordinated the evac, and vanished. I didn't vanish, Elise said. You buried me. Ramsey's face darkened. It was the only way. If that network had learned what really happened, we would have lost more than a few safe houses. You weren't erased, Elise. You were quarantined, she scoffed. That's what we call it now? He sat silently. Then in a voice gentler than she'd ever heard from him. They wanted a SEAL with a clipboard. I sent them a clipboard who became a damn SEAL. Her eyes burned suddenly. Not tears, just weight. Years of it. All that time, she said. You knew I'd be questioned. Ramsey nodded. I didn't think Sloan would be dumb enough to bait you with the signal. But when he did, and you responded, I failed the test. No, Ramsey said. You passed one only 4 people alive would have even recognized. He stood now, pacing slowly. The Pentagon thinks you're a breach. They're running your file through every blacklist filter they can. And if they find nothing, if I hadn't stepped in, you'd be in a black site by morning. Or worse, he turned to her. But I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to ask you something. Elise waited. There's chatter, he said. What remains of that terror cell believes someone sabotaged their plans. They think the journalist who exposed them didn't act alone, and they've started asking questions. Her blood chilled. They're looking for me? They're looking for anyone connected to Ghostwalker. That includes the SEAL team, support staff, and yes, the Army officer who somehow knew how to whisper like a frogman. Elise leaned forward. What do you want from me? Ramsey didn't blink. I want to bring you in, legitimately this time. We declassify Glass Echo, what we can, assign you to a new joint task force. You'll operate above board under protection and with purpose. And the rest of it, she asked, the parts that can't be declassified? He met her gaze. They stay in the shadows, where they belong. She paused, then asked the question she'd buried for 3 years. Do they know what I did? Ramsey didn't answer with words. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, nestled in black fabric, was a silver medallion etched with an eagle, trident, anchor, and pistol. The Navy's highest unspoken commendation. One not awarded lightly, especially not to outsiders. This was voted unanimously, he said quietly. Even Kowalski cried. Elise let out a shaky breath. Her hand hovered over the metal but didn't touch it. Is it real? She asked. It'll never show up in your record, Ramsey replied, but it's as real as the men whose lives you saved. And in that moment, alone in a windowless room beneath the Pentagon, Elise Marlowe finally felt seen, not as a threat, not as an anomaly, but as what she always was, a soldier, a shadow, and the reason 6 families never got folded flags in the mail. The war room was colder than Elise expected, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Everything inside was engineered for power. The long steel conference table, the walls lined with secure comms and real-time threat dashboards. Monitors pulsed with satellite feeds and global alerts. There were no clocks, just pressure. At the far end of the room, seated beneath the seal of the United States Department of Defense, was Secretary Raymond Ellis. To his left, General Barrett Sloan, recovered in posture but not in expression. To his right, Colonel Dana Whitlock in a new face, someone from the NSA, silent and watchful. And at the other end, standing behind Elise, was Admiral Cole Ramsey. This wasn't a tribunal. It was something more dangerous, a reclassification of truth. Secretary Ellis leaned forward, hands clasped. He didn't look at Elise right away. Admiral Ramsey, you asked for this emergency convening. You stated the issue was of national security and warranted review of a previously sealed operation. We're listening. Ramsey nodded, placed a small encrypted drive on the table, and activated a portable display. The screen came to life. Grayscale satellite footage, stills from classified operations, intel intercepts. Then came a label no one had seen in years. Operation Glass Echo. Status: deep black, authorized viewing only. Gasps were stifled. Even Sloan raised an eyebrow. Ramsey stepped forward, his tone calm but deliberate. 3 years ago, Naval Special Warfare Command embedded a joint team in northern Syria in response to intel that a terror network had obtained chemical agents from abandoned regime stockpiles. The mission's objective: neutralize the threat before it became another Benghazi, or worse. He tapped a key. Footage played. Grainy drone footage of a compound. Masked men unloading canisters. Elise Marlowe, Ramsey continued, was not merely a support analyst. She was inserted under non-official cover as a local journalist sympathetic to insurgent narratives. Her role was to intercept communication protocols and map the distribution network of the weapons. Now Ellis looked at her, studied her. Within 48 hours, Ramsey said, she had embedded deep within the target cell. The SEAL team assigned, Bravo 7, established indirect comms through her. What happened next was never expected. He paused. Bravo 7's safe house was compromised. Their exfil bird was downed. They were surrounded. The room was silent. And Elise, Captain Marlowe, did the unthinkable. She broke cover, used the enemy's fallback comms to coordinate a false retreat, rerouted the enemy's own fighters, and directed Bravo 7 out through a corridor we didn't even know existed. Sloan's mouth tightened. She was never meant to act, he muttered. No, General, Ramsey said sharply. She wasn't. But when the mission collapsed, she was the only reason 6 American warfighters came home. Ellis turned to Elise, his expression unreadable. Captain Marlowe, is this account accurate? She nodded once. Yes, sir. Whitlock frowned. Then why has her record remained sealed? Why were we not briefed? Because Ghostwalker wasn't supposed to exist, Ramsey answered. Its existence would have implicated multiple agencies, exposed SIGINT vulnerabilities, and triggered international backlash. You buried her, Sloan said bluntly. No, Ramsey said. We protected her. There was silence. Then Ellis stood. He looked at Sloan, then at Elise, then finally at Ramsey. Is there more? Ramsey reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box and set it gently on the table. With your permission, Mr. Secretary. Ellis nodded. Ramsey opened the box and turned it to face Elise. Inside, a silver medallion, inscribed with an anchor wrapped in trident, crossed arrows behind it. The Navy's Shadow Commendation, an unofficial but sacred token reserved for actions beyond rank or branch. It had only been awarded 6 times in 40 years. Captain Elise Marlowe, Ramsey said, your actions during Operation Glass Echo prevented a chemical attack that would have killed over 400 Americans across multiple embassies. You served in silence, endured scrutiny without defense, and acted with courage beyond expectation. He pinned the medal to her uniform. The Navy will not record this citation. It won't be in any database, but every SEAL who survived that mission voted for it unanimously. You earned their respect and their lives. Elise said nothing. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes glistened, but didn't break. General Sloan cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice had softened slightly. Mr. Secretary, he said, I misjudged Captain Marlowe. Her knowledge of restricted protocols was not an exposure. It was a legacy. Her performance under pressure was exceptional. Ellis looked at Elise again, but this time not as a threat, as an asset. We believe the remnants of the terror cell are actively seeking revenge, he said. Captain Marlowe's identity may have been compromised. She needs to be under protection, Whitlock added. And under assignment, Ramsey said. She's proven herself where others failed. It's time we stop hiding her and start using her experience. Ellis nodded. Captain, he said formally, as of now you are reassigned to Task Force Orion, a multi-branch special intelligence initiative. You'll be under the direct command of Admiral Ramsey. Yes, sir, Elise replied. There was a beat. Everyone stood. The war room began to empty. But before Sloan walked past her, he paused. He looked her in the eye, extended his hand. Damn fine work, Captain. She shook it, firm and steady. Outside the war room, the corridor buzzed with quiet footsteps and coded orders. Elise walked beside Ramsey in silence until, "You kept it all," she whispered. "The medal, the vote, the truth." "I knew we'd need it one day," he said, and that day had finally come. The Pentagon looked different now, not in its shape or size or steel-edged formality, but in how it felt beneath her boots. Captain Elise Marlowe walked the corridors without an escort this time. No handcuffs, no watchful eyes. Just the silent hum of responsibility returning. She wasn't going back to the shadows. Not exactly, but she also wasn't stepping into the spotlight. Her orders were clear. Task Force Orion, a cross-branch coalition of the best minds in military intelligence, special operations, and cyber warfare, where silence was power and knowledge was survival. Her first briefing was in 30 minutes. But first, she had someone to see. He was waiting in the courtyard, leaning against a stone pillar near the reflecting pool. The same smirk, the same broad shoulders. Chief Ryan Kessler hadn't changed much. Still had that half-sleeve tattoo and the sharp gaze of a man who'd seen too much and somehow kept his humor intact. "Thought they locked you in a box," he said. "They tried," Elise smiled. He walked up, hands in his pockets. "You really shook 'em up in there," he said. "Even Sloan looked like he'd swallowed a grenade." "He baited me," she replied. "I just called his bluff." "You didn't just call it," Kessler said. "You dropped the whole damn deck." They both laughed. Brief, real, necessary. Then came the pause. "The alleyway," he said, softer now. "Back in Al Raqqa. You remember?" Elise nodded slowly. "There were too many of them," she said, "and I didn't think the decoy radio trick would work." "It didn't," Kessler smirked. "You just bought us enough time to improvise." He looked down, kicked a pebble near his boot. "You saved us, Elise. I never said it properly. You all would have done the same." He met her eyes. "But we didn't." "You did." Silence settled between them, but this time it was warm, a silence earned. They parted with a simple nod. No salute, no handshake. Just that mutual glance that said, "We were there. We made it out. We never forget." Later that evening, Elise stood alone by the edge of the Potomac River. The city was quiet. Gold light spilled across the water from the horizon, the last breath of daylight painting the sky in long, thoughtful strokes. She clutched the velvet box in her hand, not because she needed it, but because it reminded her what silence could cost and what it could protect. The Navy commendation would never appear in a database. The mission would never be in a textbook. But the truth was enough now, because for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't hiding. She wasn't a threat. She wasn't a ghost. She was a bridge between worlds no one dared to name aloud. Behind her, the Pentagon glowed with artificial light. Ahead of her, a future built not on titles or medals, but on the kind of clarity only a battlefield whisper can teach. Elise breathed in slowly, watching the tide shift beneath the surface. Then she turned, walking back toward her next unknown. Because now she understood. Sometimes, a whisper is louder than a war cry. And sometimes, it's the only sound that changes the course of everything. In a world obsessed with noise, loud voices, loud victories, loud reputations, Captain Elise Marlowe reminded us that sometimes the quiet ones carry the heaviest truths. She didn't seek attention. She didn't ask for a platform. She simply did her job, even when it meant disappearing into silence. Her story isn't just about military protocol or secret missions. It's about character, about choosing duty over recognition, and about the idea that honor isn't something you wear. It's something you carry. In today's world, how often do we overlook the people who hold things together behind the scenes? The nurse who stays an extra hour, the grandfather who never talks about what he did overseas, the neighbor who quietly brings groceries to a veteran down the street. This story is for them, because while some people shout their worth, others prove it. in moments that don't make headlines but change lives. So here's a question we'd love to hear your thoughts on. Do you think society still values quiet strength? Or has the world become too focused on what's visible, loud, and public? Let us know in the comments below, especially if you or someone you love has served quietly, whether in uniform, in a hospital, or simply at home. We read every comment, and we know some of the deepest stories come from the most unexpected places. If this story moved you, please give it a like so more people can hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, because every week we share stories that reveal the extraordinary courage hidden in ordinary lives. To our older viewers, thank you for your service. Thank you for your wisdom. And thank you for reminding the next generation that integrity doesn't need an audience. Until next time, remember, sometimes a whisper is louder than a war cry, and sometimes it's the whisper that saves everything.